Hey guys, welcome back to Mystifying Miracles. I'm Kristen and I search out true stories every week and present them to you guys. The stories always have at least one miracle in them, so we're going to go ahead and get into our story for today. There was once a boy named Lee, and Lee grew up in a loving family. He was taught values and morals, and, he just had a good upbringing, but despite that, he never really understood, God's love for him, so to speak. And he says that part of the reason he felt that way, that I don't know if God really loves me that much, is because he grew up in an inner city neighborhood that was just kind of run down. It wasn't the greatest. And he thought, why am I here? Due to that, he didn't understand. Now, Lee himself, he was a racial minority in school. So due to this, he kind of got picked on and made fun of quite a bit. And this is a time where he's becoming a teenager. You're already going through puberty and feelings and emotions. And it was about this time as well that Lee said his parents kind of just stopped telling him that they loved him. And it wasn't because they didn't love him. In fact, it was the specific reason why. His parents said that, well, he's a teenager now. A lot of teenagers get embarrassed by that kind of a thing. So we kind of just stopped because of that. But the point in time of them stopping that just didn't work out with everything else going on in Lee's life. So it just made it that much worse. And Lee says too, as he's growing up and he's going through these teenage years, he said that he felt no matter what he did or how hard he tried, that he just kept messing up time and time again, whatever he was doing in life or thinking, or, he just had all those thoughts of like, I'm not good enough. I keep trying, but I keep messing up. Everybody goes through that. And also at the same time, his father had been laid off his job, and it was a job he had had for 10 years. And it was a great job, or at least it was decent. It paid the bills. But due to restructuring of the company, they had to let Lee's father go. Due to this, they just didn't have a lot. And they were struggling quite a bit just to pay bills. And, during these struggles and him losing the job, they decide to move to Colorado. Now, this was the end of the world to Lee, which I can understand. When you're at that age and you're going through puberty, you have your friends, and your friends mean everything. So if your parents are trying to move you to another state away from them, that would be the end of the world. So I can see how that must have been for Lee. Also, at the same time, he overheard his parents talking quite a bit about money and finances and all their struggles involving money. So, when I was reading this story, it made a very good point, because despite that not being the child's problem, right? When children hear those things, they take on that stress as well, because they begin to worry, oh gosh, my family's going through a rough spot. They know that you have to have money to pay bills, and you know what I'm saying? So children also start to take on that stress as well. Now, after they had moved and everything, Lee, he had one pair of shoes, and that was it. And with him going through puberty and growing so fast, these shoes no longer fit. The shoes had holes all in them, and the soles of the shoes were separating from the actual sneaker part of the material. So, yeah, it wasn't very good for poor Lee. And, because of this, you can imagine the state of these shoes. That's all he had to wear to school. He didn't know anybody, but his peers end up making fun of Lee and just picking on him because of the shoes. So one day, Lee musters up the strength and he asks his parents, can I please get some new shoes? These don't fit. They're falling apart. They hurt his feet, but his parents, his mom said, I'm sorry, Lee, we're going to have to wait a little bit. We don't have money for that right now. And while this wasn't a true emergency, so to speak, this was an emergency to Lee. I mean, everything he was going through and being made fun of and only having one pair of shoes that were useless pretty much, to him, this was an emergency. And one day comes along and Lee's mother gives him just a little glimmer of hope. So she had been seeing how down in the dumps, how emotional this had been making Lee. She knew he was getting made fun of, and she could see the state of the shoes that they were in. So she grabs Lee and says, Lee, let's pray for new shoes. And Lee's kind of like, okay. So the two of them sit down together and they begin to pray that God would make a way and they'd be able to get him some new shoes. Now, when they prayed that day, Lee nor his parents ever told anybody else that they had prayed for new shoes. So there wasn't anybody like friend-wise or family-wise that knew they had done that. Well, the next day comes and a family friend shows up unannounced at their doorstep, and they happen to be carrying a box. Now, of course, like I said, his family they weren't expecting anyone, so they answer the door, and the family friend proceeds to say, hey, do you have anybody that wears a size 10.5 shoes and could use a pair? Grandma sent these to one of our children, and they don't fit any of them, so thought maybe you could use them. Now, the shoes themselves, they were a brand name, something Lee had not ever been able to afford. He says that they were nicer than anything he had ever had. So Lee proceeds to try them on to see if they fit. And wouldn't you know it, they fit to a T. They fit exactly perfectly. Lee was a size 10.5. And it said for the next year, Lee wore those daily, day in and day out. He wore those things into the ground. But I mean, what a gift. He was so excited. And he says to this day, they are the most comfortable shoes that he ever had, that he had ever worn at that point in time when he received them. But he says still to this day, he's never had a more comfortable pair of shoes than those shoes that he was given. Lee also says that the miracle itself of actually receiving shoes unexpectedly, he said that he realized that God loved him so dearly, so much more than he ever thought, because here was this extravagant gift to Lee. These shoes, brand name, he'd never had anything like that. And it was like he took it as God was giving him this extravagant gift to show him, I love you and I'm watching out for you. A decade went by and Lee ended up sharing this with about 10 buddies of his, I think the story said. And so, of course, they're young adult, or Lee is anyway. He's a young adult now. And after sharing it with those 10 friends, he says that 2 or 3 of those 10 ended up sharing miracles that had occurred in their lives. So it was very cool. Actually, the book that I got this miraculous story out of, he's actually the author. Lee is the author of this miracle book. And so I haven't got to those stories yet, but the 2 to 3 of those guys that were in the 10 that he shared that with, that they shared their miracles, he actually put those 2 guys' stories in the book as well. So I thought that was just so cool. Like something that you think is so small, like a pair of shoes, is a huge miracle to Lee. And he shares that miracle, which then goes out. They share their miracles, and then now it's put into a book that's sold nationally for more people to read about more miracles. I don't know if I explained that as well as I wanted to, but I think you get the picture. That is quite amazing. Let me know what you guys thought of this story. And just Remember to like and subscribe if you like it. And that'll be that. I will see you guys for the next one. Thank you so much for watching.